Moo 99 red balloons, where are you? And I've got balloons. All right. It works. I have a lot of memories with the Xbox 360. It wasn't my first console, but it was the first one that I really got absorbed by. I was raised in a PC household, or I guess a Mac household. I was raised in a computer game household. How about that? We didn't have a console, we had an eMac, one of these big boys, which if you had one of those big boys, you know that they were actually pretty capable gaming machines for a wee little lad like myself at the time. I put many hours into Guitar Hero 3 and Zoo Tycoon and Lego Star Wars on this thing. But when we finally got an Xbox 360 in the house, that's when things really changed. That's when I got really absorbed by video games for the first time. I don't even know how many hours I spent on games like Arkham City and Halo Reach and the Gears of War trilogy and Black Ops 2 and Call of Duty 4. I don't even know how many times I rode my bike down to the GameStop that was like 3 miles away from my house when I was growing up, and I would show up with like a $20 bill and just like search through the pre-owned bin of 360 games and get random stuff like Frontline Fuels of War and Black Site Area 51. Or what was really exciting was I would take that $20 bill, I'd get a cha-ching card full of Microsoft points, and then I'd go home and I would peruse the Xbox Live Arcade. I don't even know how much time that I spent downloading random game demos from the marketplace and then trying to decide from those demos which game I was going to go back to the pre-owned bin the next weekend and spend my next allowance on it. And I don't even know how many amazing experiences I had thanks to the Xbox Live Arcade and the Xbox Live Marketplace on the Xbox 360. All those extra DLC songs I got for Guitar Hero. All those goofy DLCs I got for the Arkham games, all those goofy Xbox Live Arcade games, stuff like Avatar Paintball, fucking Doritos Crash Course. The 360 and I made a lot of memories together, and while I knew this day was coming eventually, you know, the day that the 360 marketplace was no longer supported, the console's been out of production for a while, it was only a matter of time until the storefront shut down. It hasn't made me any less sad about it, and it also hasn't distracted me from how concerning of a move this is for the sake of game preservation. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know that I care a lot about game preservation. It's one of the main things I bring up when I talk about why I think PC is better than console, and why I think emulation is so important to this medium, to this hobby, to this method of storytelling, to this art form, because that's what video games are. They are an art form. And before I get into the actual, reasons why I'm concerned about this and why I have so many emotions about the closing of the store, sorry if we're getting a little melancholic today, I do want to clear up a couple things that I've seen some misconceptions about. This is not a removal of 360 games from the Xbox marketplace. This is simply the removal of Xbox 360 console's ability to access the marketplace. Meaning Xbox 360 games that are backwards compatible on the Xbone and the Series X and Series S and the whatever other garbagely named console Microsoft comes up with next. Those games are still on the marketplace. However, the reason why this is a big deal and the reason why this is a bit of a problem for preservation, at least in my opinion, is that games that were playable through the Xbox Live Store on the Xbox 360 and not backwards compatible with future consoles, which was a lot of stuff, those games are now inaccessible. And since a lot of those games don't have physical copies, and since they don't have, PC versions or other console versions, a lot of games just disappear with this update. A lot of Xbox Live Arcade games are just gone. A lot of downloadable content for Xbox 360 games is just gone. And I think it's a little ironic for this to be happening at the hand of a company like Microsoft, who up to this point has been pretty open about the fact that they want games to be preserved. Phil Spencer, at the end of the day, Phil Spencer probably doesn't have that much pull over what happens at Microsoft, and ultimately these decisions are being made by Microsoft from the top down. But it is a little strange to see someone like Phil Spencer say things like this, and then turn around and close the Xbox Live Store, or at least the Xbox 360 Live Store. And I'm torn on this, because on one hand, I get it. I get the store wasn't going to stay open forever. A digital storefront for a console that's been out of production for however many fucking years now It's not that surprising that eventually that store would close, but it is surprising that that store would close before the entirety of its content was made available on current platforms. That is a little surprising, and that is a little concerning. And you can say that, like, Joe, the games that were lost in this were the ones that nobody played. They were the games that nobody actually cared about. Maybe you didn't care about the games that have been erased with this, but I can guarantee you a lot of other people did. Yeah, they weren't Madden games getting erased. It wasn't Call of Duty being erased to the ether. Sure, it was someone's goofy little indie game being erased to the ether, but as someone who has a lot of memories with those goofy little indie games, this is a sad day, you know? And I can't even imagine how sad it is for the people who actually made those games. I'm sorry if I'm just rambling right now. I'm just kind of bummed out. I'm just bummed out. I set out to make this video with some kind of like big point to make about game preservation and about how it could not have possibly costed Microsoft that much money to keep this storefront running for the sake of preservation and nothing else. You know, licenses are one thing. I understand having to maybe, you know, cut the store back a bit because of expired licenses or because of stuff like that, but the store shutting down as a whole is definitely a little frustrating to see a company like Microsoft with people like Phil Spencer in charge who were saying stuff about how much they love preservation, how much they care about preservation. It is frustrating to then see a whole bunch of games and content and things that people grew up playing, people have a lot of memories with. That stuff is just gone. Because despite your commitment to backwards compatibility, which I think is admirable, I really do think Microsoft's commitment to backwards compatibility is an admirable thing from the modern gaming industry, but despite that, you're closing the store before it's fully backwards compatible, and that I just cannot get behind. We're living in an era of gaming where physical copies are becoming less and less common, and it's becoming more common for physical copies to not even be true physical copies, because if companies like Ubisoft get their way, then at this point, discs are just going to basically be keys. It's just going to be a disc with the key on it, as opposed to a disc with content on it. We're living in an era where games are getting constantly patched up, which is a good thing on one hand for stability, but is a bad thing for preserving the original vision, the original intention of a game, when it can just be patched up and changed, censored, altered, without the consent of the person who bought the game. And we're living in an era where emulation is constantly under attack by these big companies doing these things that are making me so frustrated. The way it's being closed and the timing in which it's being closed, those are the things that are frustrating. How many lawsuits have we seen against emulation in the last couple of years? So what's going to happen to those games that are not accessible on the Xbox Live Store anymore? The content that is not going to be made backwards compatible on the current Xbox consoles? What's going to happen to those games? If those games were not preserved through emulation before the shutdown, what's going to happen to them? A lot of those games are just gone now, and that's frustrating. It's frustrating to see pieces of art get erased. It's frustrating to see companies in charge of those pieces of art, the companies that own those pieces of art, erasing them from the internet and then putting effort into stopping emulation. That is very frustrating. I think there are two things that Microsoft could have done to make this situation better. The first one is they could have put some effort into making sure the entire Xbox 360 store was backwards compatible with the current Xbox consoles. And they've done a lot. I commend their efforts to backwards compatibility, but it's not full backwards compatibility. And you're cutting corners to close the Xbox 360 store before you get to full backwards compatibility. And to someone who cares about game preservation, like myself, that is a concerning move. I think the other way that they could have handled this is they could have taken a look at all of the games that were exclusive to the Xbox Live Arcade, the Xbox 360 Arcade, games that are not backwards compatible right now. And they could have just made their own Vims layer online. They could have just made like an official download for those games on their website. You know what I mean? Just the lack of effort into the preservation of these games is what's frustrating me. And again, I knew this day was coming. I knew the day was coming where the 360 store would close. But I was hoping that at least a handful of things would be done before that. And maybe I'm just taking this too personally. Maybe I'm just taking this too emotionally, because I have an emotional connection to the Xbox 360. I have a lot of memories with the Xbox 360. I still have my 360 in my closet somewhere. Because I don't want to get rid of it. I have too many memories with it. I have no use for it, but I don't want to get rid of it because fuck it, dude. That thing was there for me. It's just kind of a sad day. And I know you guys don't come to this channel for sad videos and sad news and sad boohoo news. So, why did the chicken cross the road? Toodles.